Thank you, Adam. A UNH poll from this June says the overwhelming majority of Granite Staters are confident that their vote in the 2020 election was accurately counted. The New Hampshire Secretary of State, a Republican, said the election was secure and the results valid. Do you have confidence in the Secretary of State and the hundreds of citizen volunteers who will run the election next week? Mr. Mowers, to you first.
I have confidence in our New Hampshire elections. We always have to get better, right? I mean, we've seen some challenges around what happened in Windham. I'm glad that the Attorney General is now ensuring that there are election monitors in Windham. We have to ensure we're continuing to get better. That's why I'm glad that there was a bill that was passed that provide for routine audits, as well as making sure that we have voter ID here in New Hampshire. This is common sense stuff to ensure that folks have confidence in their elections. It's the bedrock of our constitutional republic. And we need to make sure that everyone knows that when their ballot goes in that box, that it counts. Until that number is 100%, we still have work to do.
Ms. Huff-Brown?
Well, I do have confidence. I have a great deal of confidence. I don't have confidence in Matt Mowers because he voted twice. He voted here during the primary in 2016, and then he went down to New Jersey and voted again in the 2016 primary.
There she goes again.
That's very, very, very disturbing.
Just so
and I've been
untrue.
all along, I've been saying that that is just wrong. That's what the Democrats do. We don't do that.
But
We are
Democrats
the
also make
party.
up things and
We are the
lie,
party of election integrity. Yes. Photo ID, you have to show a photo ID. There has to be a paper trail. There has to be a paper ballot so that if there is a question, whether it's with the computer, whether it's with the tallying, that people can go back and they have a record of what happened and how people voted. So I do feel confident in the New Hampshire law. I know we have hundreds of people across the state who will be watching very closely.
Mr. Mowers, you were invoked. You have 30 seconds.
Well, I appreciate it because I think folks here deserve to know the truth, not the left-wing spin. And this is something that was concocted 6 months ago by Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and Chris Pappas. The Attorney General, as Adam, you reported, came out and said that there was nothing here. In fact, former U.S. Attorney Tom Colantuno for New Hampshire said that anyone still talking about this is just playing politics. And so what we're hearing right now is more politics. I'm the only one who was in Trump Tower on election night with President Trump in 2016 when we actually were fighting for election integrity. I take it very seriously to make sure everyone has confidence in their elections, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Councilor Prescott, to you. Do you have confidence in next week's election?
I certainly do. As a senator, I was the prime sponsor of voter ID. I passed that legislation over the veto of Governor Lynch, who decided that after it was put through the second time to just let it pass into law, because I worked with Governor Lynch, I worked with the town clerks in our state, and I made sure that on the day that we switched from not having voter ID checked to the day that they were checked, all votes were counted that day, and it went seamlessly because I was inclusive of all the people in New Hampshire from all sides. That experience comes because 24 years running for office, 14 years in office, that experience is priceless to getting the job done in Washington, D.C. I want to take that experience of fighting for our elections to Washington. Also, I would like to say that we need a person that has the integrity to tell the voters what they believe all the time. And I have filled out every single questionnaire and done that for the people of New Hampshire to make their own decision about who the candidate is best for running in November.
Representative Baxter, to you on this.
What's the specific question again?
Do you have confidence in the Secretary of State and the hundreds of citizen volunteers who will run the election next week?
Well, instead of just talking about election integrity, I led the fight here in New Hampshire, in the New Hampshire legislature, for a full forensic audit of the 2020 presidential election. Every single voter deserves nothing less than full transparency with our election results. And we audit businesses, we audit agencies of government. Of course, we should audit our elections. And my bill was free for taxpayers. This was just common sense, and people have so many concerns about the elections. There are people that won't vote because they don't believe their vote will count, and that is a shame. And you want to know why I stood up and introduced that bill? Because there was no one else that would do it. Leadership is doing what's right, not just what's popular or what's easy. And you can say the same thing when it comes to Matt Mowers voting. Maybe it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't right. It was wrong.
Yeah, you were invoked. 15 seconds, quickly.
Yeah, just really quickly. You know, this reminds me a lot of those debates in 2016 that happened here when President Trump came under attack all the time from liberals in his own party as well as liberals from the other party because they knew he was going to take on Washington, D.C. It's the exact same thing that's happening. It's why Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi weighed in on this attack against me and couldn't be further from the truth.
And finally, Ms. Levitt, to you on this. Do you have confidence in next week's election?
Well, you've cited the UNH poll. I don't believe in polls, I believe in people. And I consistently continue to be the only candidate in this race who says that I believe the 2020 election was undoubtedly stolen from President Trump. I do not believe that Joe Biden received 81 million votes. That's a preposterous claim. And after Matt Mowers voted twice, he said that he believes Joe Biden legitimately won more votes than Donald Trump. And I reject that. And I know voters across the state, whom I've spoken with across the state over the last year, reject that as well. I was working in the West Wing of the White House on election night 2020. We saw unelected bureaucrats across this country circumvent state legislatures. They pushed absentee and mass ballots across the nation, leading to chaos and confusion. I saw the media's election interference firsthand working in President Trump's White House. They censored and silenced negative stories about Joe Biden, most infamously the Hunter Biden laptop story, in an effort to get President Trump out of the White House. We need election integrity efforts here in our state, not down in Washington, D.C., like Chris Pappas and the Democrats seek to promote.
You were invoked quickly again. Matt Mowers, you believe Biden won in 2020?
Just really briefly, I'm the only one here who actually worked with President Trump in 2016 to ensure we had election integrity around the country. I'm the only one who made sure that folks could put their ballot in and know it counted. And that's what we need to get back to. That's what's going to ensure integrity in our election process. That's what's going to ensure confidence in our democratic republic.
Okay,
I'd like a chance to respond, since he's referred to me several times as being a liberal, clearly referring to me, because all your hit pieces against me, you call me a liberal. I've been called a lot of things. I've been called old, fat, ugly. I've been called old grandma, but never liberal. I am not a liberal. I am not a liberal. So I just want to set the record straight.
Thank you, Gail. Let's have